do this. Okay. Hi, folks. We're going to reset this recording for the third time. Luckily, I didn't record an hour and a half and then lose an hour and 10 minutes of it. This time, I just did about 15 minutes. Cool. So, anyways, we're going to get started. If after this video you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please bring them to class, bring them to our lessons, email me, and I'll either make another video to explain what that is, or we can go over it in class. Depends on how applicable it is to everybody. The other thing was, let me know if you want to do any makeup lessons. I live an hour away from Ursuline, so I'll do virtual makeup lessons. I would prefer not to have an extra day of the week to travel out to Ursuline. If we did that, I'd have to make sure that we had like everybody signed up for a makeup lesson that day. Just to make it like make sense. Otherwise, I'll plan to see you all your normally scheduled lessons. Okay, so let me know if you have questions, comments, concerns after the video. Let me know if you want to do makeup lessons. Let's jump into this. Okay, so this is going to be a crash course on introductory theory. Some of this has already been addressed. Some of this might be review. Some of this might be totally new. I don't remember what my last video was about, so I'm sorry if I'm covering similar material. But maybe just hearing it a second time in a new way will, help solidify things. We're going to start with the staff notes on a piano because that's like ground zero for this stuff. And then we're going to expand into intervals, which is a thing. We'll expand into scales, circle of fifths, chords, and then circle of fifths progression. And we'll see how music moves through harmony. We'll probably touch on random facts as we go. Excuse me. At the end of the video, I'm going to have a couple pieces of practical advice for you. On guitar, just things that'll make your life a little easier. The thing is I have to teach you the real material, and then I can worry about giving you the practicality of it all. So that's all we're doing. We're going to start with the grand staff. That's what this is here. Okay, it's the treble clef staff and the bass clef staff that's connected with a bracket. When you see this bracket, it implies or tells you that this is one instrument that's working on both staffs. Okay. On piano, your left hand plays the bass. Your right hand plays the treble clef staff. Something to take note is middle C on the keyboard is the first ledger line. That's what that is called. That line right there is called a ledger line. It's the first ledger line below the treble clef, but it is also the first ledger line above bass clef. Okay, so middle C can be written in two different locations depending on which staff, which hand the melody belongs to or the progression belongs to. Yes, you can add infinite ledger lines above or below the staff, and it's just expanding the range of the clef. It's expanding the range of the staff. Just to connect the final dots there is if you saw like 3 ledger lines under treble clef, that's essentially F of the bass clef. Okay. The reason for that is if you were to continue the notes this way, right? Or continue the notes down or getting lower, they fall into the same pattern as the bass clef, right? The reason you would use those ledger lines and not just write it on the bass clef is because the hands. You need to designate the right hand is playing these notes, the left hand is playing these notes. Yeah, so that's how that works. Now, we have 12-tone system. 5 of those tones have 2 names. That's called enharmonic. Okay, when a note has 2 names, it's called enharmonic. We have 7 natural note names. These are the white keys. We have the 5 black keys, which are the accidental keys, or accidental notes. Accidental notes are the enharmonics. Okay, so like if we're looking at C, natural right here, this key, this first black key is going to be C sharp, or it's going to be called D flat, right? So this key, this one note, is both C sharp and D flat. Now, the basic general introductory to music explanation is if you go up, it's sharp. If you go down, it's flat. So up in music, that's going sharp. Going down in music, that's going flat. Okay. In reality, it depends on what key you're in. We're going to get to keys in a little while. But it depends on what your tonic is. It depends on where you are tonally. Will determine what keys are what. Like if you're in the key of G major, it has an F sharp. F sharp. You wouldn't call that G flat because you already have a G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. You need to account for the F, and you don't want 2 G's in the same scale. You don't want G, A, B, C, D, E, G flat, G. That kind of is confusing for a musician to read. You want to see that F sharp. You don't want to see E to G. That's going to imply something else. That's a different sound or a different implication, I should say. So E to G flat, that's like a diminished third. We'll get into that in a minute. That's a really odd sound. You wouldn't want to read that off a piece of music. Yeah. Okay. So let's really quickly, let's see how this is affected on guitar. How does this all translate to guitar? So if you've been reading out of your method book, you know we're using treble clef mostly for guitar. Kind of always for guitar. We're going to use the treble clef. What's interesting is just like this, right, has A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. The guitar can do the same thing. So if we pop over, you go to A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. That's all in one string. That would be the A string. So you start with an open A. Then you go to your A sharp, first fret, B, second fret, C, third fret, C sharp, fourth fret, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. So if you can remember the like 12 note alphabet, you can work out all the notes on your strings, right? So pop on back to this. If you start on A, you need to remember the pattern, okay? Music is all about patterns, because music is built out of math, by the way. If you want any earlier explanation or more basic theoretical information on why these things are set up this way, we can do that. It's a lot of Greek Pythagoras theorem kind of stuff, early math, basically. Excuse me. But what you'll find, each one of these notes is what's called a half step. So A to A sharp is a half step away. A sharp to B is a half step away. A half step is the smallest distance we have in music from one note to another. It's the shortest distance we have. And what you'll notice is as you go through the half steps, A sharp, B, there's missing black keys. There's missing accidentals. When you have that pair, like B to C here, this is called a natural half step. They're natural notes, a half step apart. Just means that there's no black key between them. There's no accidental tone between them. The same is true for E and F. So you have two couplets. You have B and C are always natural half steps, and E and F are always natural half steps. So any other note has an accidental between it. B and C does not. E and F does not. So if you're going A sharp, B, skip B sharp, there's no such thing. You go to C sharp, D sharp, E, skip E sharp, there is no such thing. You go to F sharp, G sharp, A. Okay? So you just become familiar with that. Lock that one away. That's a good, useful one because it allows you to start mapping out your fretboard. You can start earning some knowledge off your fretboard if you can remember how that pattern works. So now, let's move over to intervals. Intervals are larger distances of musical notes, two different notes. So where A to A sharp is a half step, that's the smallest interval we have. We have names for larger intervals, larger distances, like C or A to C is a minor third, okay, for example. We work out those distances by adding up the half steps, okay? And it's essentially just if you have a C to a C sharp, right? C to C sharp, you're going to have what's called a minor second. Now, there is technically something called a perfect unison where you would just play, it would be two voices, it would be like both hands of the piano sounding C. So it would just be like, or it could be like the guitar player is playing a C and the piano player is playing a C. That would be called a perfect unison. Okay. Yeah. But really, the first interval that makes any sense. So if it was a unison, it would just be like, let's do C. There's C. Great. If you wanted to here, let me see if I can do it. So this should be an actual unison. Right? So there's one. There's two notes. You can hear it changes quality a little bit because of the physics of the strings. And that's true across instrumentation. So anytime you have two different voices, we call them voices, but instruments or whatever, sounding the same note, you'll often get this effect where you can hear that there's like a discrepancy between the two notes. And that just has to do with the physics of the instrumentation. On guitar, playing a unison on guitar, it's because your strings are different thicknesses, so they have different weights to them, different tensions. And then the other bit is those two notes, the unison is played at different lengths on two different strings. So you have the string thickness working against you, and then the placement of the notes on the string, and that string length working against you. You don't use unisons very often. You're much more likely to use octaves, and we'll get there in a minute. I just want to explain unisons. So after unison, you get your minor second. Minor second is a dissonance. Dissonance means it's crunchy. It's a crunchy sound. So if we were on C and we had, here's your unison, here's your minor second. See how things are, yeah. When you have a unison, the waveforms, like the sine waves, pressure waves, however you want to think of it, they line up. They're pretty much exactly on, with overtones and things like that interfering and making it sound a little different. But the fundamental is the same. When you get to a minor second, those two waveforms are slightly out of sync. You start to see a separation of those two notes or waveforms. And that's what causes dissonance. When you have a clash, when you have those waveforms that just are a little bit out of sync. A major second, they have it classified as a dissonance here. I don't really agree with that. It is a dissonance because it is a small interval and it is relatively, and that's what I think I have a problem with. It's relativity. To me, a major second is more consonant, good, pleasant sounding, than a minor second. So of a minor second and a major second, the major second is more consonant, right? So it's just hierarchy of dissonance and consonants. A minor second is very dissonant. A major second is less dissonant, right? It's a little more consonant. Still kind of a crunchy sound. So if we had, there's our unison, here's our minor second, and then here comes our major second. Hang on. You can hear it's still crunchy. It's not great, but it's a lot better than, you know what I'm saying? It still kind of fits, and the reason it still kind of fits is because they, when you go back to the math, the Greek math, you get a lot of the similar overtones because of how the distances match up. Anyways, minor third. So that's going to be, if our unison was C and C, our minor second is C and C sharp. Our major second is C and D. A minor third is C to E flat. And you start getting consonants here. The reason being is thirds are what we use to build harmony, chords. Chords are 3 notes or more generally. When you have 2 notes, they're intervals or double stops. Those are the names we use for that. So what I'm playing right now are technically double stops. There's your minor third, right? So unison, minor second, major second, minor third. Now we're going to get to our major third. Another consonant, more consonant than a minor third. Right? You can start to hear that harmony. It sounds like something we've heard before. Then we get to a perfect fourth. Perfect fourths are very open sounding, very solid, solidified, open, but consonant, right? So something I need to iterate at this point is we've seen our minor seconds, we've seen our minor intervals, we've seen our major intervals. We just got to a perfect interval. There are 2 more that this chart doesn't address, but we're going to call it out right now. If you take a perfect fourth and raise it a half step, it doesn't become a major fourth or anything like that. It becomes an augmented fourth, okay? Right here, they have it noted as a tritone. this is true. This is like a third name for it. Um, this is also kind of like the layman's not the right word, but it's a, let's go with, it's a technical vocabulary word versus an academic vocabulary word. Okay. So yes, this is true. Yes, you'll hear it a lot. Yes, I will refer to it. But understand that it's also called a augmented fourth. With that being said, if you take a perfect interval and you go down a half step, so like perfect fifth, down a half step, it's called a diminished fifth. Diminished, it gets smaller. Augmented, it gets bigger. Yes, you can also have an augmented fifth, and you can have a diminished fourth. But if you notice, what will sound? You can have, so like on the image here, they're highlighting C to F. If you went down a half step from perfect fourth down, you could still call it a diminished fourth, right? But ultimately, you're going to be playing an E. So it's really C to E, which is a major third. So the functionality of that interval of a diminished fourth would be a major third, okay? Which is kind of funny. It would just, you wouldn't really see that. You might see it in like advanced theory concepts, but you're not going to see that in most music. Functional, standard music. Okay. So you have minor intervals, major intervals, perfect intervals, and then diminished and augmented intervals. Tritone is a utilitarian word, a term. So if we keep going with this, we were on tritone. We hadn't listened to it yet. So if we had unison, minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, nice and open. Tritone, very dissonant. Okay? Very dissonant. It's also the like The Simpsons. It's Maria from West Side Story. Or I think that goes up to a major second. I don't remember. Don't worry about it. So you can hear that dissonance. Next up, we have a perfect fifth. This is another very open sound. Perfect is perfect. We call it perfect because it's so stable. It doesn't want to move. It's very concrete in its sound. And that's going to be C to G. Right? Unlike major third, where there's some character to it, a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth, the character is just consistent, right? Or like predictable. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. You can hear the difference, right? You can hear like that wants to do something, and this is totally content. If we keep going, we get a minor six. So that's C to A flat. It's this one. If we keep going, C to A, that's a major second or a major sixth. Minor six, major six. Next one is a minor seven. Now they have this marked as a dissonance. Again, hierarchy of dissonance. This one isn't as bad to me. This is a pretty, for common ears or modern ears, this is not very difficult to hear. This is not a dissonance that we need to worry about too much. Next one we have, so that was C to B flat. I'm sorry, my dog has got zoomies. So we got C to B flat. That's our minor seventh. If we go C to B, we get our major seventh. That's a pretty gnarly dissonance. Not the worst, but it's pretty rough. And then we have our perfect octave. Right? Same note, one octave higher. Octave just means we've traversed all 12 tones, or the distance of all 12 tones. So minor second is 1/2 step. A major second is 2/2 steps. A major third is 3/2 steps. Minor third is 3/2 steps. Major third is 4/2 steps. Perfect fourth is 5/2 steps. Tritone is 6/2 steps. Perfect fifth is 7/2 steps. Minor sixth is 8/2 steps. Yeah. Major sixth is 9/2 steps. Minor seventh is 10/2 steps. Minor seventh is 10/2 steps. Major seventh is 11/2 steps, and octave is 12/2 steps. Right. So again, half steps are C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, etc. Okay. So on guitar, we can see that we can observe these intervals in two ways. We can start on A and go to A sharp. That's 1/2 step. That's a minor second. A to B is a major second. A to C is your minor third. A to C sharp is your major third. A to D is your perfect fourth. A to D sharp is a tritone. A to E is a perfect fifth. A to F is your minor third. A to F sharp is a major third. I'm sorry, not third, sixth. A to F is a minor sixth. A to F sharp is a major sixth. A to G is a minor seventh. A to G sharp is a major seventh, and then A to A is your octave. So you can get all 12 tones lined up on one string. We've already established that, but there's proof again. Additionally, notice that there's an A here, 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 there's an A here. The reason for that is we can't traverse the guitar neck on a single string the way you can on a piano. Piano is all laid out nice and even rows, or a nice even row, systematically the same throughout the whole instrument. Guitar is not like that. Because we have 6 different strings, each tuned to a different note, they start in a different section of the alphabet, the musical alphabet we have. The reason for that is so that we can stay in a single position, like we can work in this space and hit all the notes we need to. We have a range, and this would be first position. We have a range from low E to this high G sharp. For example, that would be it's a chromatic scale, right? So it's this note to that note. That's our range just in one position. And then you go to a second position and you can do that again. See, so you have this like revolving system that we have to learn on the guitar. My point in showing you this is you can start to see, like if we start on A here, our major second is right above it, is 1/2 step higher, or a minor second. Our minor second, A to A sharp, is 1/2 step higher. A to B is our major second, 1/2 step higher. A to C. Now we can play C here or we can play C here. Both are about the same distance. 2/2 steps this way, 3/2 steps this way. Notice they're on 2 different strings. This is why it's so important to learn our guitar like scale shapes. I teach 5 major scale shapes on guitar. The reason being is because there's one version that plays A, B, C sharp here, right? A, B, C sharp. There's another version that plays A, B, C sharp. There's another version that plays A, B, C sharp. See what I'm saying? So like you start with your pinky, play your first finger, third finger, fourth finger. Play with your first finger, your second finger, your fourth finger. Second finger, fourth finger, first finger, right? We'll get more into this. It's kind of hard to see because you got every note on the fretboard. We're going to swing back around to this later in this conversation. What I want you to see is you can start to lay out where these intervals sit. So, like, you could play A to B here. So, 5th fret to 2nd fret. There's a major third or a major second for you. Then you could play this one, A to C sharp, nice and aggressive, nice and available, right? And then A to D, right here. A to D is your perfect fifth, perfect fourth. And then you got A to E right here, 5th fret on E, 7th fret on A. There's that. But then, instead of playing like A to F sharp, you can play A to F sharp. This is much easier to grab. 5th fret on the low E, 4th fret on the D. There's your major 6. We keep going. There's G sharp. Instead of grabbing this G sharp on the A string, you can just grab it right here. Right? And then your octave is above that on the 7th fret. So my point is, you know, we understand that this is one line of musical alphabet on a string, but you can also play it in position so that you don't have to stretch the whole length of the guitar. We'll get more into this. This is the long explanation that's kind of difficult to communicate, honestly. We're going to come back around to scale figures, and it'll make a lot more sense, okay? So we're talking about intervals. We talked about the names of the intervals. We talked about how many half steps are in each interval, kind of what they sound like. We've talked about how we can play them on the guitar. We talked about how they lay out on the keyboard. So let's move on to scales. So scales, a lot of music has what's formulas, okay? The nice thing about that is the formulas don't change. So this is a major scale formula. Anytime you want a major scale, you just utilize this formula. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. A whole step is 2 half steps. So C to C sharp is 1, C sharp to D is 2. C to D is a whole step. It's also called a major second if you're paying attention. But that's a whole step. C to D is a whole step. Same with D to E. D sharp to E. Okay? E to F, natural half step. F to G, whole step. G to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. B to C, natural half step. So the major scale formula, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. You'll notice that there are no accidental notes included in the scale of C major. Okay? So no accidentals in the key of C major. That's going to become important later. The intervals that we get when we look at this scale, we get a major second, we get a major third, we get a perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major 6, major 7, perfect octave. So a major scale consists only of major intervals and perfect intervals. The unison, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave are always perfect, unless we raise or lower them. But when we're talking about major scales, they're always perfect. So when we count this up, you got to remember to include the starting pitch. So starting from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, F is our perfect fourth. Starting from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G is our perfect fifth. Okay, that's when we talk about distance, we always include the starting pitch. It's a little different than how other counting system works, but that's the way we do it. Excuse me. I'm just trying to think about where I was going with that. Oh, so what does that mean? If we go back to our fretboard and we want to play a C major scale, it's a little difficult because this only goes up to the 12th fret, but just try to go with me. So if we started on this, oh, perfect. We'll do this one. So if we start on C of the B string, first fret, right? We know that we only want the natural note names. So we start on C. D is our major second. E is our major third. F is our perfect fourth. G is our perfect fifth. A is our major sixth. B is our major seventh. And then a half step up on the 13th fret. This is 12th. On the 13th fret would be the note C again. That would be your octave. Okay. But that is really tedious. You don't want to play a major scale all in one line. So we have different shapes that we can use. Just for the example of it, you can play C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Those would be the fingers. You'd use your second finger on C, fourth finger on D, first finger on E, second finger on F, fourth finger on G, first finger on A, third finger on B, fourth finger on C. And then now, this is that little box. So we took a whole string length of scale and turned it into a 4-fret box. See what I'm saying? I hope so. Anyways. Oh, boy. The nice thing, if we know that the major scale formula is this and always will be this, and we know that the major scale shape is that box and always will be that box because the formula will always be that formula, then guess what? Any note that we start on is the same shape with the same formula. So for unlike keyboard, where you would have to learn like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then have to learn like A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, on guitar, you just need to pop your little square, your little 4-fret square over to A. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And there's your A major scale. The benefit of this is guitar becomes super universal. Once you have the formula and the shape connected on your dexterity, you're pretty golden. The trouble is you lose sight of the theory behind it. So you miss why it works sometimes. Like it's easy to skip why it works. It's easy to skip which situations are appropriate, like that kind of stuff. So I really harp on understanding all of the nuance to these kind of scales. If you wanted to, you could work out all the scales for funsies. Anyways, where are we going from there? Okay, so we just talked about like you can use the pattern to figure anything out. So let's, I just did A major, but I went kind of quick. So let's look at G major. Let's look at B major. That's a tricky one. So if you start on B and you go up a whole step, that would be an open B, by the way. Your second fret is your major second, your whole step away. That's C sharp. So B to C sharp is a whole step. You want another whole step. That's C sharp to D sharp, right? You want a half step, D sharp to E, whole step, E to F sharp, whole step, F sharp to G sharp, whole step, G sharp to A sharp, half step, A sharp to B. So you get B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. And again, if we played it here on the second fret of A, you'd get B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. Same 4-note pattern. Okay. The problem is once you get to the B string and you start to include the higher 2 strings of the guitar, the intervals at which these strings are tuned at changes. So from E to A, E, F, G, A, B, or I'm sorry, E, F, G, A, that's a fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. So E to A is a fourth. A to D, 1, 2, 3, 4. A to D is a fourth. Perfect fourth. D to G, D, E, F, G. D to G is a perfect fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. G to B. This is where it's different. G, A, B. 1, 2, 3. It's a third. It's a major third. So that means everything is shifted by 1/2 step. And then B to E, we're back to 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a perfect fourth again. The reason that little shift happens is for the playability of the instrument. If this was tuned in all fourths, you'd get weird shapes that you can't really play on the instrument. It wouldn't lay out correctly. So you need that major third to get some of the guitar voicings right and reachable, attainable with the musician. Again, crash course. We're not going to get too much further into it. Bring your questions, comments, concerns later. Let's pop over to the circle of fifths progression. Okay, so if we remember, C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, has no accidentals, no black keys. If we notice, here we are. If this, so the absence of accidentals in your key signature means you're in C major. Okay. Now, why is this called the circle of fifths? Because if we go from C and count up 5 in the key of C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get to G. So C to G is our first leap. C to D is another fifth. D to A is another perfect fifth. A to E is a perfect fifth. E to B is another perfect fifth. Once we get to B, our perfect fifth becomes an F sharp. The reason for that is because everything up to this point, the fifth was a natural tone in the key signature, right? So in the key of A, E is the fifth, but E is not in the key signature, is not notated with anything, right? So on the staff, this sharp sign sits on F. This sharp sign sits on C. This sharp sign sits on G. No E. There isn't an E sharp anywhere. So that's how we know this is a E natural. When we get to B, we have an F sharp in the key signature. So if we were to count up to the fifth in the key of B, it would be an F sharp, not an F natural. So that's where we get F sharp from, and C sharp, etc. Is because the fifth is in the key signature designates that the fifth is an accidental. So you'll notice as you there's the order of sharps and flats. Hang on, let's back up. So we have the fifths, right? We go this way. C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp. Usually right here, F sharp and G flat is where I flip from F sharp into G flat, from sharp keys to flat keys. This is my transition point. I don't worry about C sharp. This is my transition point because both keys have 6 accidentals, right? F sharp has 6 sharp signs, and G flat has 6 flat signs. So to me, this makes a whole lot of sense, not to mention it's at the 6 o'clock hour. Super fun. When you get over to C sharp and D flat, you'll notice that D flat only has 5 flats, but C sharp has 7 sharps. Side note, if C major doesn't have any accidentals, When you have C sharp, it means the whole scale of C has risen a half step, has been raised a half step. So every note of C major becomes a sharp. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. Vice versa, if you were to have a B flat somewhere, or a C flat, wherever they would put that, it would be C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat. We don't really use those keys. They don't make sense. Why would we use weird, crazy 7 sharps when we could use 5 flats? It's easier to read. It's easier to keep track of. So, yeah, C sharp exists. C flat exists. We don't really use them that often. We only really see it when we're doing like analytics, analysis of music. You'll see it then. Okay, so as we keep going, we'll get into the flat keys. D flat has 5 flats, A flat has 4 flats, E flat has 3 flats, B flat has 2 flats, F has 1 flat, and then you're back to C, has 0 flats. If you go C to F, you go counterclockwise, you're moving by fourths. C, D, E, F, F, G, A, B flat, because we have a B flat in the key of F. B flat, C, D, E flat, because we have an E flat in the key of B flat. E flat, G, A flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. We have an A flat in the key signature, so we go to A flat, etc., etc. Okay? You might be asking yourself, but how do we know when the sharps and flats enter the circle of fifths? And where do they sit? There's 2 ways to think of it. The first way is the order of flats. These guys, they enter as bead Jacif. B, E, A, D, G, C, F. This is the order that they enter. So B is your first flat, E is your second flat, A is your third flat, D is your fourth flat, G is your fifth flat, C is your sixth flat, and then F would be your seventh flat, but we don't, again, that's C flat major, and we don't deal with that. So you really only have to worry about up to G flat, 6 flats. The sharp signs are the reverse of that. So if you had bead Jacif, you would have F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Now, don't get me in trouble. The way I learned this, the way it was presented to me when I was 16 years old, was fucking Chris gets drunk at every bash. Okay? So whether you're going sharp and you're going to party, or you're going to make a bracelet, a bead bracelet for Joseph. It's kind of what it sounds like, Joseph. You're going to make a bead bracelet for Joseph. Anyways, that's the order of flats that they occur. Now, what's the deal with the inner circle? These are what's called relative major and minor keys. What that means is if you took the C major scale but started on A, you would get A natural minor. So A natural minor and C major have the same notes. Let's go pop over at the piano again. So C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's the major. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That's A minor, A natural minor. Pretty straightforward. You might say, but what about like D? Couldn't D be all the same notes? Yes, 100%. That's called modality. You can take C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and you can start on any note of that major scale and just continue using the C major scale to fill in your note names, and you'll have what's called a mode. The first mode is Ionian. That's C major. C major has another name. It's called Ionian. That's Ionian. And D Dorian. It's still C major. I'm just starting on D. E Phrygian. F Lydian. mixolydian. Here's that A natural minor. Played that one twice because it's kind of important. Then you have B Locrian. Locrian doesn't sound complete. I want you guys to really hear that it needs to resolve. Okay, you'll hear. I hope you'll hear the weight of it. It just feels incomplete. And then finally we get back to C major, which is where it'll resolve. You can feel that it rests on C. If you're interested, I can get into why that B Locrian is the way it is. So yeah, that's modes. You don't really need to know modes right now, but yes, they are all connected. They all line up with each other. You might ask, why wouldn't they include all of the modes in the circle of fifths? Well, there are some circle of fifths that do. It's very convoluted. Like, it just looks messy. It's difficult to see. But also, we really only write music in like Western tradition writes music in major keys and natural and minor keys. Okay. And we keep track of the natural minor because there are two other kinds of minor that we write with for different reasons. So we have C major, right? And then we have A natural minor. That's all the same notes. But now I'm going to play what's called harmonic minor. What it is it goes from a G natural. I'm going to play a G sharp instead, okay? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. That's A harmonic minor. Let me play natural minor again. A natural minor. And then harmonic minor. And then the last one that we use for minor composition is melodic minor. What that is it replaces F with F sharp and replaces G with G sharp. Okay, so like harmonic minor had a raised seventh, that G sharp, we're just going to add a raised sixth, the F sharp, to the scale. So this is A melodic minor. So all three back to back, you have A natural minor, you have A harmonic minor, you have A melodic minor. Okay. If you want to know why we have three minors, ask me and I'll get into it. Because it's interesting. So anyways, we only worry about major and natural minor, okay, because the natural minor is related to the major. If we used like harmonic minor and melodic minor, the key signatures wouldn't line up. They wouldn't make sense. So we just keep it on natural minor, the modes of each other, Ionian, Aeolian, Ionian, Aeolian, major minor. You might also notice like, oh, here's C, it's red. Here's C minor, it's red. Why is that? What they're doing here is showing the parallel major and minor keys. So relative, they share the same key signature. Okay. Parallel means they start on the same pitch. Okay. But they're two different qualities. So it would be C major and C minor. C minor has 3 flats, right? It has an A flat, a B flat, and an E flat. C major has no accidentals. So let's hear what that sounds like. You have C major, and then you have C natural minor. So you have, here, let's do it this way. C, D, E is a major third. F, G, A is a major sixth. B is a major seventh octave versus C minor. C, D, E flat is a minor third. F, G, A flat is a minor sixth. B flat is a minor seventh. And then your octave. So major, C minor. Okay? You can hear that the tonalities are similar. They're close. You start on the same pitch. You're using the same kind of structure or the same relationships, but you can hear those slight adjustments to the third, the sixth, and the seventh. As a side note, that's how we get. That's like the formula to major and minor is from major, you lower the third, the sixth, and the seventh, and you get minor. So in reality, if you can remember these scales, this half of the circle of fifths, F, C, G, D, A, E, B, if you can remember these and their key signatures, what their key signatures look like, you will understand the other half of the scales. You'll be able to utilize these. If you remember these guys, just half of these, half of the circle of fifths, and you remember that to get to minor, right, from any major scale to get to minor, you just lower the third, sixth, and the seventh. You can go to like A major, A, B, C sharp, D. There's your C sharp. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Right? A, B, C sharp becomes C natural. D, E, F sharp becomes F natural. And then G sharp becomes G natural. So that means all of these accidentals go away and you get A minor. No sharps or flats. If we did another one like G gets weird. So if you're in G major and you want to go to G minor over here, you would lower the third, the sixth, and the seventh. So if G major is G, A, B, C, let's go over here. If the G major is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, you'd lower the third, B flat, you'd lower the sixth, E, and you would lower the seventh, F sharp. So you'd get G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. There's your G minor. We back over back to here, and look, G minor, 2 flats. Okay. What else? That's a lot. Bring your questions. Now, oh, you know what? I need one more tab. I need diatonic. Yeah, that's fine. Here we go. Okay, so this guy. Let's see. Here we go. If we took C major, let's pull up. Where'd it go? There it is. If we took C major and we built chords on each scale degree, so we built a chord on C, built a chord on D, built a chord on E, but we only use the notes of C major. We only use C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and left out the accidental keys. we would get this diatonic chord structure, these chords. Okay. Now wait a minute. I totally forgot to pull that up too. Okay. Here we go. We're just going to use this simple one. Yeah. So, whatever. All right. So, we're going to worry about just the triads, and we're not going to worry about suspensions. Don't worry about suspensions. There's only 4 chords that we can make with triads. Okay. Triads are the chord structures that we most commonly use in Western music right now, tonal, diatonic Western music. There are other kinds of chords. The next most common are 7 chords. They'll add the 7th to the chord, 7th scale degree to the chord. And then there are extensions, and then there are other types of chords like quintal, quartal, cluster, bunch of other stuff. I can get into all that if you want later. Major chords, right, are simple 1st scale degree, 3rd scale degree, 5th scale degree. So essentially, all we're doing, 1st scale degree, 3rd scale degree, 5th scale degree. We're essentially just skipping notes, okay? So C, E, G is our 1st chord. Where'd it go? Here we go. If you look, C, E, G, 1st chord. Next chord, jumping around is getting weird. D, F, A, E, G, B would be our 3rd. So this is C, E, G. D, F, A, just take my word for it, it's a minor chord. So that's going to be 1, flat 3, 5. Okay. That would be like C, E, G. Or C, E, flat, G. Major would be C, E, G. Minor would be C, E, flat, G. The difference in sound, C, E, G, there's your major sound. C, E, flat, G, there's your minor sound. Major, minor. Okay? From there, I usually go to augmented, or diminished. I'm sorry. It just makes sense to me to flat the 3rd and then flat the 5th on top of it. And you get C, E flat, G flat. I got to remember how to play this. Let's try this. Oh, no. There we go. Is that right? No. There we go. So there's that. So you get C major, C minor, wait a minute. Oh, jeez. I'm such an idiot. I'm sorry, guys. Hang on. I've been playing bass all day, so I'm a little kerfuffled. C, D, E. So there's C major, C, E, G. Okay. Then we get C minor. We lower the 3rd. Then we get C diminished. Lower the 5th and the 3rd. And then if we come back up to major, just for the sake of the experiment, we get major. That's what that sounds like. And then if we raise the 3rd, or raise the 5th, so C, E, G sharp, so we get that sound. So we got major, minor, diminished, and then augmented. Okay. Each one has a different function in music, and each one has a different tension and release point, function in music. So we'll get into that later. That's another exploration kind of thing. Where was I? If we listen to the diatonic chords, here's the example: D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. Okay. Again, just to reiterate, this is the C major scale, and each scale degree is built of thirds. So you got C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F. Okay. Really quick, if we come over here, and let's take B diminished. We're going to take B major. We have B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp. Okay. Or G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. To get diminished, we flat the third and flat the fifth. In the B major, let's go back to here. Wait, there it is. Okay. So in B major, we get B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. So we utilize all of the black keys and only 2 of the white keys. So our thirds are 1 would be B, our third would be D sharp, our fifth would be F sharp. But the formula calls for a flat third and a flat fifth. So we get B, D natural, and F natural. And if you notice, those are all white keys. Right? They fit in the C major paradigm. So now, if we take these chords, these diatonic chords, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and we superimpose those on top of our circle of fifths, right? You'd get C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B minor, and then you're going to go back to C. Or B diminished, really. This is a B diminished, back to C major. Where was I? What's interesting about that is if you follow the counterclockwise motion of it, for example, you get like B diminished, E minor, A minor, D minor, G major, C major. It moves this way. That motion, coupled with the diatonic chord structures, brings us to the circle of fifths progression, this little formula looking thing. It starts on the third chord of the key. So in C major, that's going to be the E chord. E minor, that's your third. Moves to the 6, which is your A minor. Moves to 2. 2 is pretty standard. Moves to 2, which is D minor. There's your 2. Moves to 5 is the standard move, which is G. And then moves to 1, which is C. Okay. If we notice, we get E is our third. Go to 6. A is our minor. A minor is our 6. E to A. Oops. 2 is our D minor. E, A, D minor. 5 is G. And then, dang it. And then C is our 1 chord. We're back to C. E minor, A minor, D minor, C, G major, C major. What does that sound like? It sounds like this. E minor, A minor, D minor, G major, C major. So you can kind of hear how that moves very nice and easy. Very predictable, very kind of solid. But what about this? What about all this jazz? What about 4 and 7? What they're saying here is that these are interchangeable. So you can substitute 4 for 2, and you can substitute 7 for 5. And that's very true. So the most standard thing that we hear usually is 2 5 1 because it follows 2 5 1. It's the exact circle functionality. But we could go 2 7 1. We could do 4 5 1. We could do 4 7 1. Okay? So let's listen to what those sound like. If it was D minor, 2, 5, 1. That was 2, 5, 1. D minor, G major, C major. Now let's substitute 4 for 2. So we would have F major, G major, C major. It's a very common one. It's like every pop tune by the Beatles. The next one would be, so we could do that, or we could do minor 2 to B diminished, right? That's that 7 diminished chord. So 2 to B diminished. Let's do and then 1. So 2 7 1. It's a little different. It's a different kind of sound. It's not really what you'd expect. What am I doing wrong here? Why am I got a B flat there? Oh no, that's a D. D's right. Yeah. So D minor, B half diminished, C major. You can still hear the resolution. It's just a different thing, right? We want to hear. So similar, but kind of different. So now that's what that would sound like. That was D, B, C. Now let's try F, B, C. That's going to be a weird one. Works pretty well. So you can hear how just those few substitutions, right, 4 options of progress just through those 3 chords can have several different effects. Okay. This is kind of like the standard, like when you learn how to write paragraphs in middle school or whatever. You have like your introduction and then your 3 body sentences and then your conclusion sentence, right? Opening sentence, 3 body sentences, and then closing sentence. That's kind of what this is. It's that kind of formula. It's that kind of like boiled down, simple, straightforward, just like it's always going to be right. So that's just an interesting little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that every piece of music utilizes this the same way. A lot of music breaks these rules. Rules are made to be broken. So lots of music utilizes this, and then lots of music doesn't utilize this. And you can kind of classify. You can start to classify music based on how this is used, not used. So, anyways, really sorry about my German Shepherd, Molly. She is apparently barking at the neighbors or something. Super fun. Okay, so now that's about as far as I wanted to get into the theory stuff. So let's break this down to some practicality. I don't know how long I've been recording. Let's double check. I don't see. Oh, there we are. We've been recording for an hour and 15 minutes, so I'll try to be quick. Okay, so practicality. These are 5 chord shapes that I really want you guys to be familiar with. It's called the cage method. Cage method is really nice because it's a methodology that teaches you 5 distinct chord shapes, very useful chord shapes, and then it associates scales, figures with them later on. Now that we know that our chords are simple adjustments, 1 1 3 5, 1 flat 3 5, 1 flat 3 flat 5, etc. When we look at cage method chords, if we can start to identify which notes are 1, are 3, and are 5, which notes are 1, 3, and 5, we can adjust those notes a half step one way or the other to create those other qualities. These qualities. So the first chord is C major. I like to use 3rd fret on the third finger, 3rd fret, A string. Middle finger, 2nd fret on the D string. Open G, and then 1st finger, 1st fret on B. So those notes are C, E, G, C, or 1, 3, 5 octave. 1, 3, 5 octave. So if I wanted to make this a C minor chord, I would go 1, flat 3, 5 octave. It's a little tricky. That's what that would sound like. If I wanted to go, I'd have to reshape it a little bit. I'd have to move it around, but you could continue to do that. There are other ways to do that. Or you could continue doing these adjustments, is what I mean. You can do these adjustments, etc. A major, nice and easy. I like to use the pad of my 3rd finger as the bar for this chord to play all 3 of these notes on the 2nd fret, right here. So I play an open A, and then I play the 2nd fret on the D, 2nd fret on the G, 2nd fret on the B. And I really only worry about those inside 4 strings. So A, E, A, C sharp. So my C sharp is that 2nd fret on the B string, which means if I want an A minor, I just lower the 2nd fret to the 1st fret. And now I have that sound. So A major down to A minor. Okay. The next chord is G major. I like to use 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of E, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of A, open D, open G, open B, and then pinky on the high G, high E string, 3rd fret, high E string. All right. This one's a little wonky. This one, there's some different methods on using this one. We won't get into the adjustments just yet, but you should know how to play that chord. Then you get E major. It's an open E, 2nd fret on the A, 2nd fret on the D, 1st fret on the G, and then open B, open E. So you get E, B, E, G sharp, B, E. So if you want E minor, you just lift your 1st finger. You get E minor. D major, this one's kind of tricky. You're not going to play E or A at all. You're going to play an open D string. 2nd fret on the G string, that's the note A. third fret on the B string, that's the note D, and then second fret on the E string, that's the note F sharp. Right? So you get your 1, 5 octave 3. Okay. I really would like you to become comfortable with these these 5 chords, and then we can learn how to use them moving forward. Adjusting them for different tonalities, right? Different qualities. But then we can also, I can teach you how to turn these into, now if you can learn these shapes, right, we can learn how to maneuver them across the fretboard. But that takes some direct instruction. I can't really explain that right now, because I would need to be able to see you and whatnot. Anyways, so let's get over to major scales. So just like we were dealing with this, where'd it go? This, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. We kind of already laid out. We were working on it before with this guy. But just to reiterate, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2. Don't worry about this one. I can explain why if you really want to know, or just take it as don't play that. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2. If I've explained major scales to you, you already should have that in your mind, that little pattern. All it is, now this is A major. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2. And then finally, the ultimate of shortcuts, the thing that every guitar player will use at some point in their life, most of them beginners, tablature. Tabs are very straightforward. It's a grid system. The guitar is a grid system. You have your low E, A, D, G, B, and your high E designated with a little E. That's not always the case, but most people do that nowadays. And all it literally is, you read it left to right. And if it says 7 on the D string, you play the 7th fret on the D string. It says 5 on the G string, you play 5 on the G string, 5 on the B string, 5 on the E string. Now the tricky part is when you do that, you get but now you got to get over to, you got a 6 and a 7 lined up, right? That means you got to play both at the same time. So you need a 6 on D string and you need a 7 on the high E string. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. Okay. With that being said, so you can just power through charts like this. This is tablature, guitar tabs. You can just power through any song like this. Just to reiterate, when you see things like this that are stacked, these are chords. You got to play all of those notes at the same time. When you see, I'll just scroll down to the bottom. It's easier to. So most charts will have this kind of key for you to reference. So what they're saying is if you see a slash down, like a backslash, it's slide up. If you see a forward slash, it's slide down. If you see an H, it means hammer on. Hammer-ons are just, you play a note, and then you use the strength of your fret hand to play the next note. Okay? Pull-offs are the opposite of hammer-ons. You play a note, and then you lift off the string, and you let the string ring with whatever note. So for pull-offs, you have to have both fingers already on the fretboard. You play the first note, and then you release into the second note. They're using B as bend. I've seen other keys use other notation for bends, but a bend is just, you're just bending the string. Now, guitar players will break their strings often when they do that, so don't be shocked when that happens. And then a release. I've never seen release before. I'm not exactly sure. But what I would imagine is like hammer on chord style or a pull off kind of thing. I think ultimately that's what that is. It's a pull off. I don't know what they're using release for. That's kind of weird. Here's a good thing though. So everybody can kind of power through and read these strings of notes, these numbers, all they want. But if you can analyze the music to say, oh, that's a 2 on the D, 2 on the G, 1 on the B, and 3 on the high E, that is I'm not sure. That's a E, A minor. So that's an A minor 7 chord. If you can just start to learn like, oh, that's A minor 7, you don't have to power through this. You know what I mean? You can go, oh, that's A minor 7. I'll just make a note. There's A minor 7. And that's kind of what they did down here. They gave you like, okay, so you're on a minor to back up the solo. So they wrote out the solo section, but then they also gave you the accompanying chords on top. So the accompanying chord says, oh, you're on an A minor. Then you're on a C over G. Don't worry about what that means. You're on F major 7, etc. Right? Those are just referring to shapes. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? These shapes. These kinds of shapes. There are more versions of these shapes. But that's what it's referring to. It's a shape. It's just referring to a shape. They just spelled it out. Why did they spell it out? Because the people who use these things don't know how to read music. And not everybody needs to know how to read music, but like they don't know how to analyze music. They don't know how to read music. They don't understand music. That's what this is for. This is very useful, right? If I needed to learn a bunch of tunes by tomorrow, 15 tunes by tomorrow, yeah, tabs are going to make my life a lot easier, for sure. But if I'm a 15-year-old student whose parents just bought me a guitar and I'm going to try and learn stuff like this, and I think I'm going to learn like some real music, like material, this is not the way to go. You might be able to play some tunes, but that's a far and away from like being a musician. No slight, just reality. There are other notations you'll see in these keys. There are other notations. I couldn't find one with like a bunch of them so I could explain each thing. This is a pretty good, like 75% of music will have this kind of stuff. Not the release. I don't know what that's about. But most music will have these kind of motions. There's a few other kinds of motion, but you don't got to worry about that right now. Some of it you'll just figure it out as you go. Okay. So any tune you want to learn, you can just look up some tabs and start working through it. That's as far as I was going to go today. I realize that this is another hour and a half video. But just to reiterate, if you have questions, comments, concerns, please bring them to the lessons. Shoot me an email. Depending on what the questions are, if any, I'll either make another video with explanation or we'll just talk about it in our lesson. Okay? I hope you all are well. Have a great week, great weekend. See you all soon. Thanks.